Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here and out of the heat and the there's a nice air-conditioned breeze up here. It's nice. I am Dr. Kent Peacock. I have been the director of the Creole Heritage Center here at Northwestern State University for just over a year. So I am excited to finally maybe feel a little bit more stable and in control of things, but also wonderful to welcome some of the women who are here with us, and maybe I should say back to the Folklife Festival. It's been a few years since some of them have been here, and I'll also mention this is both the Creole Heritage Center's 25th anniversary this year. It is also the 25th anniversary of the folk festival that was dedicated to Creole heritage and history. So we can kind of call that a kickoff event for the center before it opened its doors. And I'll briefly mention that the center has a display right outside, as well as with a program book and t-shirt that I found this week in our archives from that folk festival 25 years ago. So I am here to introduce and to moderate, but I have a feeling that once we get started that I'll kind of fade into the background, which is the way it should be. So joining me this morning are women who are from the St. Augustine Catholic Church, which is located in Islesville, Natchez, Louisiana, about 20 minutes or so downriver from Natchitoches. And they are from the Confraternity of Christian Mothers kind of quilting committee or quilting group. The reason that I'm kind of here with them is, for those who don't know, St. Augustine is kind of the long-standing central hub of one of the key Creole communities in the state of Louisiana. Often we call them the Cane River Creoles. I'm going to kind of turn it over to the women who are here with us to kind of introduce themselves, and I do have some questions about about quilting and about what's going on here, but we'll kind of just let the conversation flow from there. And once they introduce and talk a little bit, we of course will have some time for questions, hopefully, from you all. So hand it over, whoever, just let us know your name, and we can kind of start from there. So.
I'm Carrie Sears.
I'm Darlene Matwire.
Gloria Jones.
Minnie Matwire.
Kathleen Dunlap. I'm the newcomer, but I'm the talker, so
That's
it'll jump started for you ladies. These group of ladies are absolutely phenomenal. I'm not from Cane River, I'm from Alexandria. And I approached Mama Glow, I call her godmother of Cane River. She's awesome. And she introduced me into quilting. She literally taught me how to thread a needle, how to rock the needle, which took forever, and got me into quilting. And these ladies have been doing it for years. So I'm learning a lot from them. Mama Glow is a wonderful resource for how all this got started at the church, how they used to do it many, many years ago. Darlene and I are probably the youngest one, the newliest one.
Yes, I'm new to this as well.
But she knows a lot of history about how quilts were used over the years. And then Miss Carrie's been quilting forever. Anytime you go in Miss Carrie's house, she's got a quilt going. She's hand quilting. Baby quilt, full quilt, it doesn't matter. And Miss Minnie, well, she's just kind of in charge too. And together, we all quilt. It's a good social event. We meet 3 days a week. What is it? 3 hours a day, from 1 to 4, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, and we sit around and quilt and share stories, and some days we don't talk much because life is kind of hectic, and this is kind of a quiet time for us to relax. And then there's times that we're just full of energy, sharing all kind of stories. So, Mama Glow, why don't you start us off with the history of how all this got started at the church? Because we volunteer our time. It takes us 9 to 10 months to do a quilt because it's hand done, and we raffle it at the church fair. So, Mama Glow, you want to go from there and tell us how all this got started?
Well, as far as I can remember, and now, you know, a little bit old, I don't remember everything. But my mother was Blanche Sears, and she loved to quilt. And eventually, I was a very small child, she started asking of some of the ladies to come and visit with her and quilt with her. And so they did. They would gather at each other's house. And then eventually it came to them that we could make a quilt and raffle it for our church fair, because they always had, as far as I can remember, they always had a church fair every fall in October. And so they decided that that would be a good fundraiser. So that's the year they started making quilts at the church, at the hall. And the ladies would come in and quilt just like they're still doing now. But they, like I must have been about 14 or 15 years old, or a little bit younger, I don't remember exactly. But anyway, and so it went from sewing wood quilting to making meat pies. So, you know, we did a lot of things at the hall, at the church hall, and everything that we did was for the church. And the ladies would, just like Kathleen was saying, they have a good time. We would go and they would then, and I would, since after I got to be a mother and quilted and everything. And so those are the things that I can remember very well. My mom's been gone now for quite a while. So, yeah.
Darlene, you want to talk a little bit about like you were sharing with us, when the trains would come through and how they would use the quilts as signals?
Well, as I said before, I'm somewhat new to the quilting world. I guess I've been doing it maybe for about 6 years. So I'm not from Natchitoches, I'm from New Orleans originally, but my husband's from Natchitoches, and when we moved here, I was invited to come and join the ladies. I came and I've been here working with them ever since. I love it. My cousin, Nadine Laurent, and she passed away about 3 years ago, and she is really the one who got me into quilting because she loved it so much. And I guess I've always seen women in my family sewing, but they didn't do quilting. They did, you know, they sewed clothes. My mom, my aunt, my grandmother, I can remember her at the old Singer machine pressing the pedal, and I was just so impressed with that, you know. But they were more seamstresses as opposed to being quilters. So Nadine was really into quilting. She loved it. And she did a lot of baby quilts. And so I said, well, you know, I might look into this too. So ever since then, I've really been quilting, and I really enjoy it. To me, it's almost like I like to see what the end result is when you take this fabric and you're cutting all these little pieces and you're putting them together, and to see the beautiful work that comes in the end. It's really, I love it. So I'm pretty much a new person to it, and I've learned a lot from the ladies here who have been quilting for many, many years. And I enjoy coming and, you know, just the company and the conversations we have as we're quilting. Over the years, I've taken a few classes and learned a little bit of some of the history of quilting. And at one point, you know, quilters quilted in order to have something for them to stay warm. Today, it's kind of changed. Like, it's not a necessity to just have it for warmth. There are all different kinds of quilts. There are quilts that are art quilts, and some of them are just beautiful, and they are definitely works of art. You have other quilts that people do based on social issues going on in our country today, and they'll do quilts based on different social issues that are, you know, happening. And it's just intriguing to me how people just take an idea and they just go with it, and it's just a beautiful way of presenting their art. And you don't really think, oh, that they're artists, but they really are. The quilts are really a work of art to me. And I've learned different things. I remember in one class, the instructor told us, you know, a long time ago, quilters put mistakes in their quilts on purpose.
We do that a lot.
They
Called character.
So they felt if they had a perfect quilt, that in some way you were saying you were a perfect person, you know, and there's only, like, God was perfect, so it was a way of mocking God if you made something a perfect quilt. So they used to put mistakes in the quilt on purpose. Quilts, I've learned, have been used in other aspects of history. So the Underground Railroad, in dealing with slavery, many times quilts were used to send messages to runaway slaves, where certain patterns were used in the quilt to give them guidance as to which direction they should go into to escape, whether or not, hey, this is a safe place for you to be, or not. So different patterns would be used in the quilt. And a lot of times it was done out in the open. Nobody was suspicious about it. You know, you kind of knew what the patterns meant. And the quilts would be hanging out as if airing them out. And this was how it was done. So I found that very interesting. And there are books you can get, you know, on that topic, as well as other topics. So I found it very interesting, and like I said, I really like it. It's very, very calming to me. It's kind of keeping me sane, as they say. This is how I relax. And some people might say, man, that looks really intriguing, you know, how can you relax doing that? But this is how I relax. I like to quilt.
Maybe picking up on patterns and so forth, as they mentioned, one of the things the committee does every year is they make at least one quilt that is raffled off in October at the church festival, the church fair. And maybe you all can talk about patterns that you choose, or if there's maybe not as strong a symbolic meaning as those from the Underground Railroad or so forth, but you know, talk about the process, or are there meanings behind any of the patterns that you've done recently, or you know, why you've chosen what you've done?
Jump right in there, Miss Minnie. This is how we are when we quilt.
Not necessarily a meaning behind them, but we usually come together and have a meeting and we all decide on the pattern. We have a lot of books and stuff we look at and we decide on the pattern. Most importantly, it has to be appealing, eye-catching, color scheme. Because if it's not, then you're not going to do without selling your raffle tickets, and it's all donated to the church. So we donate our time, we make the quilt, and then when it's raffled, everything we make is donated to the church. So it's not so much, the meaning behind it. It's, I guess it's the sell purpose, in order to sell you tickets to get.
Absolutely.
And we haven't failed one yet, so we must be doing something
There we
right.
go.
Yeah, we all have different styles of quilting, different quilt stitch, but it's what makes the quilt unique. If it was all the same, it wouldn't be unique. So they're all very unique when you look at them. You can almost tell who quilted what. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we've quilted long enough together. We can tell that's Minnie's stitch, that's Darlene's. Mine is very obvious. Miss Carrie's is always perfectly spaced.
And she's very quick. She's really fast.
She can 3 times faster
Yeah.
for me. And then Miss Minnie's fast, and I'm the caboose. I bring up the rear.
Well, I learned to quilt as a child at home. Again, it was a means for warmth. It wasn't, we were a large family, so it took sometimes 3 quilts or 4 to a bed. So we did a lot of quilting. My mom taught us all how to quilt, so we learned to quilt at home. Later in life, she had other members of the community, where she would join to help them quilt, and they would come to quilt. And when we were growing up, before life got hectic for us as teenagers, we learned to quilt at home. And I was away from it for a long time working, but then I couldn't wait to retire to get back to quilting. So here I am.
Miss Carrie, when y'all made quilts before we had fabric stores, where did y'all find the fabric for quilting?
They would use flour sacks and, different types of feed sacks, really, was what they used.
My
And
mom also would cut up old clothing. Once you outgrew it, and
Yeah,
everyone else
some
was
old
passing on
clothing.
to, it was cut up and made pieces and put together and made quilts out of most of our old clothing.
So today we come together and we try to come with which one we think we'd like to do, and then we vote. We vote on everything. And if you say I don't care, it doesn't matter. You have an opinion. You have to vote. It's the way we run it. And then we pick a pattern, and then we all meet at the fabric store, and we all pick bolts of fabric. And of course, I like neutrals. Minnie likes bright colors. Darlene has her favorite, but somehow it all comes together with when we hit a fabric store, they know we're there because we've taken over the countertop with all the bolts of fabric, trying to figure out how to coordinate it and visualize it in our heads. And we get back and we start cutting it out, and then we have learned over the years to make a sample. We made a sample of the one we're doing now, and I did a great sales job on neutral tones, and I thought it was going to be absolutely gorgeous. And we put that sample together, and that was the most boring thing. So we go flying back to the fabric store
for a few hours, by the way.
Oh yeah,
It wasn't like an hour.
It's hours. I'm telling you, that fabric store, Hobby Lobby knows now when we hit it in Natchitoches, we're coming.
They just leave us alone.
So we pick out the fabric, and then again we come back and we cut it, multiple pieces. There was one we did of the Dresden plate.
Oh.
It was like almost 1,000 petals, wasn't it, or more? I mean, that we cut out.
That's a lot of pieces.
Lot of pieces to that one. So a lot of times when we pick the patterns out, it's like, okay, how fired up are we for an intense pattern? Or is it going to be one of those years that we've all got 50,000 things going on, and oh, by the way, we still got to get this quilt done, a pattern that works with all that. But we end up with, Miss Carrie's usually the sewing machine. She gets on that sewing machine, and she can work a sewing machine, baby. She gets those pieces put together, and Darlene gets to sewing, and Mama Glow kind of oversees the whole thing, and then Miss Minnie and I are the cutters, and we cut out all the pieces, and eventually everything, all the pieces come together, and you really start seeing it. And then we lay it out and get the filler and lay that out, and then we have to decide on what goes on the back, if we want a solid or a pattern. So that may be another adventure to the pattern store. And then we come back and you have to pin it all. We pin it. Now, when you read in catalogs, they say to baste it together.
It's too much trouble.
That is just too much trouble. Has anybody ever done that? Holy cow, that takes forever. You might as well quilt it by the time you do that. So the ladies taught, we do safety pins, and we just safety pin it all over together. And then we go to put it on the frame. And when we first started putting it on this frame, I think Mama Glow, wasn't it made years and years ago? The rail and the frame we use is the 4 legs and these long, long rails that have been covered so that you can safety pin the quilt to the rails.
Because our quilts are large, like for king size
is
bed.
what we do. King size.
It's a big quilt.
Yeah. So when I first joined, 4 or 5 years ago, when we used to put that quilt on that stand, it took us all afternoon. That quilt was falling every which way but loose. We were grabbing corners. The legs were coming down. I mean, so now we got it down to what? I say 5 minutes or less. It's about 30 minutes. We can put it on the frame. You get it all pinned. You get it pulled tight. It's got to be pulled tight. And then we just sit around and like Miss Minnie and I are demonstrating, and we just start picking a block, pick a space, and you start sewing, and we agree on how you're going to sew it. Are we going to do both sides of the seam, or are we going to do one side of the seam? Because what you do on this, when you have a solid piece underneath, when you flip it over is where you really see the pattern that you've stitched. So we did a centennial quilt. I'm giggling because, of course, who picked it out? And we got it all laid out. We never got the border sewn. Miss Carrie and I were pulling our hair out till we figured how to really do that right. We got it on the frame, and it was one of those where we used a stencil, and you stitched, like on these little white squares, you would have a design. And it's almost like embroidering, with quilting thread is what you're doing. And we, on the Centennial, and it's out on exhibit, we did a rose, and we did fans. And those roses like to put us to our knees. Was it a fan and a rose?
The roses wasn't a centennial. That was for our Christian mother's anniversary.
Well, the 100-year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one was for.
That had the fan?
Yeah, that was what, 2019, 2021.
I don't know, but I love doing stenciling.
She chose the roses on a 12-inch square.
And it was detail, baby.
It was almost truck time.
We're getting this on
But
camera
when
so
we
everybody
finished-
remembers. So.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
But when we
just joking.
finished, it was the most gorgeous.
It turned
Yeah.
out beautiful,
Yeah.
but that's how we work. So I guess, is there anything else? Any questions? Anybody here quilt?
Well, a couple of things. So it sounds like, well, not trying to speak to your age or anything, but it sounds like at St. Augustine, y'all been quilting there for about you're up to 80 years darn near, huh?
Oh, it's been a long
For a very long time.
Longer.
Right.
Probably
Yes,
longer.
I know. And I don't know if anybody knows a lot about the difference from way long time ago. Mama Glow, you made the different type of frames that they used back then. So I think there was some that hung from the ceiling at some point.
At home.
Now, that your husband had made it for you out of some boards. That's where the first came from. And eventually then I can remember seeing some new ones, so, by woodcutters. So, that part cleared out. And back from the times that I can remember, is that the ladies did a lot of things just like Kathleen has been describing, that you join together and do all the selecting and all that. Well, but back in my mom's day, one would pick out a pattern and they would go to each other's house and join together. And then finally, that's when they did get to go to the church hall after we had the nice church hall. So but the quilters all had their own way. You know, you might have a short stitch and you might have a long stitch, but you put it all together. We had a lady in the community, Leah LaCour, who was a professional quilter. And you watched her stuff, because she really knew what she was doing. And we still do Leah's quilts when we see them now, and she's been dead quite a while. Yeah.
And we still use her tools with her initials on, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
she taught you, didn't she, Mama Glow? And then you kind of passed it down to us? Or y'all got
really.
together? How did
Yeah,
that?
we really got together. One thing, my mom tell me one thing, and Leah would tell me something else.
Everybody does it different. That's the uniqueness of it.
Yeah.
But what Nicole was saying about the ones hanging from the ceiling, those were the way we did it at home.
At home.
They were hooks in the ceiling with straps, rope, and you'd hang your frame. You'd hang your frames, and you would lower it with your quilt to quilt. And when you were done for the evening, you wind them back up, and you just walk under them. You didn't take them down. You didn't have enough room to leave them up, so that's how they were done when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So I do have another question. So I know that a lot of this folk was passed down from your family members. So have you been able to succeed in sharing this trade with your children?
I have a boy. It ain't gonna work.
They're not
When I
interested.
have to observe, yes, I will, but as
They're not
of now,
interested.
no.
The young people nowadays are not
I
interested.
intend I have a daughter, she just turned 30. She likes doing crafts, so she kind of took that after me. But I think I would like to kind of ease her into it. I think she would really like doing this. You know,
You quit?
when you're younger, you kind of, you're busy. Life has a lot of, you're just busy. And
Do you
I think she would enjoy it.
Quit?
So I do intend on trying to show her, some things and maybe work with me on something, a smaller quilt, maybe a baby quilt or something, and get her to start,
And this is
passing on the skill.
It's really hard to find people that hand quilt. Even in the exhibit hall, a lot of the ladies coming by, were you one of them? I think maybe not. They use a machine. Is what most use now. Is a long arm
Long
machine.
arms.
We'd rather hand quilt. It's simpler.
Well, now
Well,
that
they're more beautiful.
you're saying all that, I have 4 daughters, and I didn't teach either one of them. Not either one of them.
Well, they
I didn't learn how to quilt with my mom either.
No.
Then they move away, they have their own life.
Yeah.
So basically, it's when they have time, that you can teach them something.
Did your mom teach you how to quilt?
No, my mom didn't teach me. I learned with my mother-in-law after I got
Oh,
married.
that's right. Yeah, after you got married.
Yeah.
Well, I
I was
learned
going to say something to that. Well, I am one of Mama Rose' daughter. To me, she's Mama.
And you didn't pick it up?
Well, I've sewn all my life, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
made every dress that my daughter made. We made Barbie clothes and so forth. And now that I've just moved back home a year ago, and once I finished building this house I'm building, you know, I have thought to like slowly come and peek in on you guys. It is on my
Yeah.
mind, but, because I do like sewing, I love the idea, because I've been wanting, you guys finished one, after I had breast cancer 10 years ago. A best friend of mine had these beautiful old handkerchiefs, white handkerchiefs, that she had sewed together, put it together. She
Yeah,
said,
we
"Well, I
did
want to do a
that,
quilt,
too.
but I don't know how to do it." So Mom was like, "Tell Cora to send it," and we sent it, and you guys quilted it, which still stays on my bed, and very grateful. But you know, I'm just going to begin in life again, you know. So
yeah,
it's a
life has.
time-consuming deal, and you
Yeah.
know, just even think I do it 3 days a week. It's like, oh wow, this is awesome to have that
Yeah,
kind of time.
but you're retired. Well,
I plan on possibly joining in, just to let you know.
yeah, you have to reach a point in life where you can just sit. You know, because life is so busy now.
You know, you did that. I mean, you built your house when you moved here, and you did a lot of your own stuff. So it's like, you know,
Yeah,
it's easy.
and the young kids, the daughters, you know, they've got children and they've got a life, and you're chasing them, and yeah, things are hectic, and then you finally reach a point in life where it's like, whew, I get to breathe and do it for me. Yeah.
It's a wonderful time for us. We even find time for a little coffee, a little tea cake,
Thanks.
a little banana bread in between.
Well, yeah,
It takes 15
Take a
minutes.
break.
We take a break.
Yeah.
I'll
Cool.
spin, might be the last thing, but I'll spin off
Oh,
of
yeah.
what you just said, that my mom is Miss Minnie, right here. And so coming up, I sewed, because Mom sewed. And so
That's
I made
right.
my own pep squad bloomers and outfits, and I made a lot of what I wanted to make in school. I took the sewing classes. Never did we ever just sit down to quilt. So she's right with that. But I'm a lover of the needle. I love that. And now when Mama Belle, which is Mama Glow's cousin, she was living, she and I sat down and we actually quilted for one of my nieces, a quilt for her. So I was able to assist and sit with her and learn a little bit more. And as Mama's been part of this, I've been able to sit and kind of watch and learn. And I've made my own couple of quilts for babies. And so I mean, it's fun. I enjoy it, and I have that passion as well to one day when I ever retire.
Yeah, why don't you slow down?
Be able to join. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I look forward to that. I tell them all the time, like, y'all are doing that in the middle of the day while I'm working. Do it at night.
Right.
So, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I have that passion.
That was my background too. I came from, you know, I like to sew clothes, and my mom taught me how to sew. And I also took a couple of classes. I remember my sister and a good friend of ours, one summer we went to one of the schools in New Orleans had just a summer sewing camp for a week. So my mom, you know, registered us, and we went. We sewed for a week. My sister, well, she didn't catch on to the sewing bug at all, and she didn't need to. 'Cause, no, it wasn't her thing. But I did, and all through high school, whenever we would have time off, I would sew something, you know, to wear, just to build my skills. But now I really don't sew clothes anymore. I do this. So my husband talks about my stash of stuff in my sewing room. I have fabric that I can't use because, you know, it's different fabric that you use for quilting. So I have like my stash that I used to use to sew clothes, if you know, and I have my stash, bigger stash for my quilts. So it's I don't know, my interest just changed, and it changed toward quilting more than, you know, sewing garments.
Got a question in the back.
I got, I guess, 2 questions. My first question is, the way y'all sound, I'm wondering now that 3 hours y'all are together, how much quilting's going on? How much social activity going on? I think we all know the answer to that. But my second question is, my wife and mother-in-law, they quilt. And there's been times where like the whole church that they're involved with has got together, but they would, like, each individual person made squares brought
And then
the
some-
squares. It was almost like a family quilt, because they were all related, and they would bring the squares to combine into one quilt. Is that a certain type of quilting, or is that
We,
just?
we kind of had to do that with COVID because we couldn't come together. So what we ended up doing is some of us cut at home and some of us sewed the pieces. They had the pattern. And then finally, COVID lifted enough with masks, wasn't it? We could finally come together in the parish hall.
With the mask. And
With the
I think
mask.
only like three of us.
Three of us,
that.
yeah.
It got rough and we wound up quilting 5 days a week, like 5 hours.
Yeah, to get it finished in time. But that's, I mean, it just, you can do them in so many different ways, and I seem to be talking a lot for someone who knows the least amount.
she-
But
Good.
And she swore she wasn't gonna say a word.
Is she the social butterfly?
Well, then-
Some days you gotta say shh.
And they're forgetting too, but they always have to have a coffee pot handy.
yeah, we in between all the socializing and the quilting, we have to take a break because that's a lot of hard work for something to eat and drink, and then we come back together and start quilting again.
I think we only take a break for a need to stand up after sitting for so
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
But we get a lot of work done. We've learned to converse and continue to work. I mean, we don't lose any time because we're talking. So if we didn't get a lot of work done, 3 hours, 3 days a week, you'd never get it done in a period of time. So I think we do great.
Now, is this everybody in the group, or you have people that come in and out from time
We,
to time?
we have a few more that fluctuates in and out, don't come on a regular basis, but shows up every now and then and so, and we welcome anyone that wants to quilt, no matter if they want to just come and converse with you or stitch for an hour, we're happy with that.
Because again, life gets so hectic. Some people can only come a certain day, so many hours or whatever. So, you know, whatever we can get, we take and we run with.
Yeah.
So, yes, ma'am. Yeah, we're not in class. It's okay.
So, and I realize that this is about quilting, but has that ever led any of you into doing different crafts, like making dolls or anything like that?
You're not ready for this answer. Should I tell her? My husband, because I hand quilt, and they've been such good teachers, you do intense thread work when you build fishing rods. So from this, I've now started building bass fishing rods. So,
Wow, that's interesting. Sorry. Anybody else? Any other craft?
No, I've always been a seamstress. I've sewed all my life. I learned as a child by watching my mother, and I would freehand cut out stuff and make doll clothes, hand stitch, because she wouldn't let you use a sewing machine. She only had that one. And then when I got in high school, I took home economics and really improved my skill. And instead of library hour, I would go to the home ec building and sew. So our teacher, who was a Mrs. Cook at the time, she did a lot of sewing. I wound up making a lot of her clothes because I would sew on my free time, on lunchtime and on library time. I'd go and sew.
now, if we finish a quilt real early, which we have been known to do on occasion, Mama Glow came up with the idea one year of making lap blankets. And then another year we made baby quilts and donated it to, what was the name?
The Women's Center here
The
in
Women's Center. And
in
we walked
Natchitoches.
in with hand quilted baby quilts for them to offer to the ladies. And then we still have lap quilts for people that are in and they're not feeling good, yeah. And we'll take it to them and visit and do things like that, so. Anything else? I think I'm at the end of my talk track.
I think they
Shall
forgot
we,
to tell you about how often they get those cookies or cake to go with that coffee though.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think I get the honor, I guess, I don't know, of trying to sum up everything here and so forth. But I think, I mean, this has been fascinating in terms of those of you all that learned from an early age, but also we have plenty of, you know, kind of half and half here, those of you that learned later on about, you know, how to quilt and so forth, which basically goes on to say that anybody who hasn't, you know, maybe if your parents didn't or your mother didn't quilt, or you didn't learn as a child, it's never too late, of course, to join. And I think the other big takeaway here is that having these kind of community spaces to just come and, you know, have friends and talk and so forth, and maybe talk away from some other, you know, members of your family or so forth, that, you know, you can share your frustrations or whatever about what they're doing. I'm joking here, of course, but
We would never.
yeah, never do that. I mean, I am sitting up here as the only man at the table, and you know, I've held back asking about, you know, how that, you know, if this is a good getting together to quilt and so forth is a good time to let off some steam sometimes from certain members of the family. But that's just.
Well, you know, you're
me
saying
being funny.
it, being the only man.
Yeah.
There are men who do quilt.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of men who do quilt.
Absolutely. So.
It's for anybody who, you know,
Yeah.
has the interest.
And I will kind of, as the last plug here, been working on this smaller baby quilt up here, but they also have the quilt, the big one, the king size that they will raffle off this October, is in the main hall. And correct me if I'm wrong, at least some of you all will be working on that all day for the rest of the day today. So please come by, and I'm sure they would be happy to answer more questions and so forth. And thank you all for joining us this morning here. So let's give everybody a round of applause.